old Mac features that new Macs simply don't have. Don't get me wrong, Apple's latest computers truly are the best in class, but these are some things some of us wish they'd kept around for longer. Number 1. Matte displays. These things were so great on MacBook Pros back in the day. Look at how you don't get any of those nasty reflections. There's just a little soft light reflected. In 2012, Apple released their last matte display on a MacBook with the MacBook Pro. Don't get me wrong, the colours look slightly different on matte versus glossy displays, but back then you could choose which you wanted when you bought the machine, as the MacBook Pros came with either. Across all their devices, Apple now only has 2 screens with the matte option, and they're the incredibly expensive standalone displays. Why would you want anti-glare matte screens indoors though? Surely it's more important to have a matte screen on a laptop where you might be in different bright environments on any given day. Number 2. External LEDs and buttons that were actually kind of useful. This button activates a row of green LEDs showing you how much charge your unibody MacBook Pro has. It was a feature on these 2008 to 2012 models, but Apple machines had these from all the way back in their PowerBook lineup. Many of the same laptops that had those LEDs had the little breathing LED on the front that signified the laptop was in sleep mode. I loved this as it was Apple's way of giving the machine a sign of life inside. Did you know the LED was timed to breathe at the same speed as a resting person? This one's less of a button, I suppose, but there was a lever in the classic Mac Pros, right? And it enabled users to lock the machine physically. That's such an odd feature, but useful in a workspace environment, I suppose. Maybe the IT staff at companies didn't want the employees to tinker with their own computers and mess things up, I guess. Number 3. Hardware upgrades. I still use a MacBook Pro 2012 as you can upgrade the RAM, display, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth cards and battery yourself, and even put multiple storage drives inside it. Look at this, right? I've got an SSD for my 4 operating systems and then an HDD for things like larger files, games and the bulk of my video editing backups. That's something only a PC user would be able to configure normally. Again, the 2008 to 2012 unibody era was the best for this, but Retina MacBooks at least had easily replaceable batteries, as well as speakers and mainly flash storage drives. Going back to my Mac Pro 2010, there's hardly a part that can't be upgraded on this thing. The CPU, GPU, memory, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth and ports can be upgraded. I've got a total of 7 storage bays in mine too, which is really mind-blowing. Thankfully, the last desktop machine from Apple with this much upgradability came in 2019, which I suppose is fairly recently. Ask anyone in the technology scene and they'll tell you easily upgradable or repairable PCs last far longer than those with soldered together parts. I should say at this point, a lot of the videos on my channel are about upgrading older Macs, so if you want to see more, take a look at the channel. Number 4. Boot Camp. Apple's Boot Camp Assistant app for Intel Macs provided a way to run both macOS and Windows natively on them. There are a lot of benefits to this, but the main one I can see is that gaming has always been a pretty poor experience on macOS, so users could run Windows for games and macOS for the productivity apps, for things like creative outlets, document editing, and more. These days, running Windows is possible on a Mac, but it won't run natively on Apple Silicon. Because of that, you'll lose a fair amount of performance and not have as smooth an experience as with Boot Camp back in the day. You'll have to use something like Parallels to run a virtual machine with Windows on it. Yeah, not ideal. Here's a couple of honourable mentions, by the way. There's the glowing Apple logo. Man, oh man. On one hand, you were needlessly advertising Apple's brand wherever and whenever you used it. But on the other, a glowing logo of any kind is cool. Few other laptops did or do that. Also ports. I know more recent Macs have been given a fair selection of I/O, but the amount of ports we got a few years ago was far more exciting. Many of Apple's pre-Retina laptops came with mini DisplayPort, Thunderbolt, FireWire, SD card slots, USB-A, Ethernet, audio jacks, MagSafe, Kensington lock, and CD drive ports. On a laptop, that's about the best selection of ports the world has seen. Okay, despite losing a lot of these things, Apple's computer line is very respectable right now. I'll be doing a follow-up of great features that only newer Macs have next week. Take the fingerprint unlocking as an example. Subscribe if you want to catch that when it comes out.